Good morning to everyone. I don't see anybody from India on. So it's good morning to everyone. Remind you that next week will be an hour earlier on your clock. Okay. India will stay the same. And we will fall back. Okay. So just reminding you of that. Also, next week will be the last week that will be using the present meeting code. So in this coming week, next week you'll be using the same code. Then that following week we'll send you a new code that will finish out the rest of the class. You can only schedule, I think, 7 meetings before they won't let you keep using the same number. So we'll have to reschedule after next week. Also, after I'll send out the review of this class this week, probably tomorrow. And I'll also be sending the Christological Astronomy workbook, which was actually the first book I ever did on the subject. And now it's the last book I'm covering in teaching the series. Thank you, Allison. Funny, isn't it, that I started at the end and had to work backwards. And that's exactly what happened. And after I wrote the workbook on how to interpret birth dates, I then wrote Christology of the Constellations, which is the second to the last book that I teach in the series. So I had to go back and build the foundation. And then I wrote The History and Truth of the Zodiac, which is now the second book that I teach when I start, because the first one that I teach is Discover Your Destiny. And I just had to work backwards to get to a procedure where people would actually could get this and understand it and would be led more to having this understanding because they had understanding. So I think the package that we've got going on now, with beginning with Discover Your Destiny, lays out the foundation of why you want to study this, among other things. But then whenever we move into the History and Truth of the Zodiac, in that booklet, then we begin to see some of the nuances of the celestial scripture and how they're broken out and the 48 constellations are arranged. And then we have been getting into the more of the depth of each one of the constellations. Good morning, Joy. And hello, Yvonne. Welcome, everybody. And or good evening to you, Joy. If I said good morning, it's good morning to everybody else. Anyway, but the Christology of the Constellations is a very, very good book. I've enjoyed looking at it as I've been through teaching it, and there's a lot of stuff. See, I went through and exhumed material from E.W. Bullinger and Joseph Seiss and Bill Banks and Francis Rolliston and a lot from Jesus, and rolled it up in a big ball and stuck it in that book. And Christology of the Constellations is just, it's a lightning bolt when you get to it. It's a lightning bolt of revelation. And it's a real skull splitter when you begin actually really conceptualizing that God wrote in the heavens on the day of your birth, your destiny, and that now you're decoding what that is. And that means who or what he saw on the day he observed you. Now, if that's not rock and roll, I don't know what is. This is, so what he saw on the day he observed you, which was in him, he's omnidimensional. So, but in predestinating you to be conformed to the image of his son, he saw his image reflected by you on the day of your observation. And that is what your destiny is, to become that. It really helps when you have the Holy Spirit, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And you see from the heavens, in the constellation of Aquarius, that God's intent always was for people to be baptized in the Holy Spirit and to have authority over the devil, as the constellation of Pisces shows, was your spirit filled in Aquarius. So that second section, I did a hi Aramina. I did a standalone teaching that you can get from our website in our resource material. The name of it was Living in the Second Third of the Circle. And what that teaching is concerning is that Christ came the first time to avail what we have now. And he's coming again to culminate his first trip. So the second third that we're living in shows the blessings that he came to bring to us, which begins with Capricorn being crucified and his feet folded underneath him like the sacrificial goat, but then the tail of the living fish showing the resurrection. Look at the storyline and how complete it is. Beginning at Virgo, the promised seed, and Libra, the scales, the price he would pay for redemption, and then to Scorpio, prophesying his wounding. And of course, we go through and look at in detail at Jesus's birth sky? Did we not do that in this class yet?
Not yet.
No.
Well, we will. Maybe we'll do that today. But in Jesus's birth sky, you dial it in the stellarium, which we'll also need to teach you how to download and start using. But in Jesus's birth sky, according to Revelation 12, the moon was under Virgo's feet, wasn't in Virgo. What's the next constellation after Virgo?
Leo.
Going the other way, Paul.
Oh, okay. Cancer.
Libra, right? And what's the first decan in Libra? Because it would be in the first decan if it's right under the feet of Virgo, right?
Right.
Am I talking Greek here to you, or am I talking astronomy whenever I say decan? It's the first third of the arc length of the constellation that the sun demarks. So it would have been in the first decan. What's the first decan of Libra? Terry Allen, or whoever. It's Cruex.
Cruex.
It's the cross.
Mm.
You know?
Yes.
I think I mentioned to you that, isn't it interesting that after Jesus was born, lived, and died, because of precession, Cruex is no longer visible from Jerusalem. And also, if you didn't know this, excuse me, during the time of Christ's birth and during his life, there was a supernova that occurred in the constellation of Cygnus, which is the Northern Cross in the heavens. And 3/4 of the way down, the vertical length of the cross is where the supernova went off. It went off exactly where they nailed his foot to the cross. and that thing burned off and on throughout his lifetime.
What is a supernova?
A supernova is when a star explodes, or actually one is made. Critical mass is achieved by fusion and nuclear fusion. Fission.
Okay.
And then once the critical mass is achieved, the whole thing explodes and it becomes like a big flash in the night, which is exactly what it is. And they're quite sensational and very, 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 very significant, especially when you see them. Well, here's a new term for you to learn with NEO. Okay, so, but anyhow, I was talking about living in the second third of the circle. Who was it that asked the other day? Was it Jane? Who was it that asked us, how do you know? And Paul gave that good answer on how do you know that the preterist doctrine is not accurate was really what was being asked. And Paul pointed out that the constellation of Aquarius shows the pouring out of the Holy Spirit, right? Before the Lord coming in judgment. So we have that written in the heavens. So you see Aquarius pouring out the Holy Spirit during the second third of the heavens, before the Lord's second coming in the last third of the heavens. I thought that was a good answer, Paul. And you see, it was always prophesied that the Holy Spirit would be given to those people that accepted Yeshua, the Messiah, the sacrifice. Just to remind you, in Sagittarius is the instant that shows Christ in his first coming, that he descended into hell and rescued the imprisoned spirits that were in hell, those that were in the righteous dead compartment. The book of Enoch talks about the 4 compartments of the dead, and wrote a book on that, by the way, I think. Yeah. So but anyhow, there was a compartment in hell, the righteous dead, and the book of Enoch said that there was a river that ran through it. There was water there, but the rest of hell was very dry. And this was a separate compartment. And then whenever Christ descended into hell, those people that were in there, he referred to in Luke, where was it 16, that he referred to it as Abraham's bosom, right? So Christ went into hell, as it says in Ephesians 4. Who is he that ascended, but he that first descended into the lower regions, that he might fill all things in all. He led captivity captive. He took those people that were captive in Abraham's bosom and delivered them to paradise. This is what Sagittarius is all about.
Where do you see that, Dr. Dale, in the stars and the decans? Is it Aura?
In Aura,
Okay.
the upside down funeral pyre.
Okay.
And in the whole context, Allison, you have to look at the entire context of the circle to see these things. So this fits perfectly after his death in Scorpio. See?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's got the arrow trained on Scorpio as though in retribution. So and a lot of this stuff about the heavens, you got to look at the context. You see Virgo. Well, that's the first one. You know that just because you're looking at it and you know it's about the Messiah. Where do you think it would be? They started in Aries. That's a stupid place to start. The astrologers start in Aries. They have no rhyme or reason that the 12 of them connect. I think that's amazing that we know the storyline that connects them all. And so anyway, that thing in Aquarius with the water being poured into the mouth of the fish was the fulfillment of Joel. You know, that of the coming of the Holy Spirit. And then those fish then, in the context of this, is Pisces, and they're spirit filled and they're binding Satan as Leviathan or Cetus tells in the heavens. And you know something else too about the whole panorama, the whole story of the heavens. It's violent. It's got death. It's got blood. It's got murder. But it's also got redemption and resurrection and retribution. Amen. I mean, this is this has got, and so once you see the circle and the story of the Messiah, you have to also look at the whole Mazzaroth that you've got in front of you, the whole picture. Let me show you some more stuff here. Let me stop this and go here and load this. Oh, also, I need to tell you that Trish told me that last class, I made available my PowerPoint slides to individuals that requested them. And I don't necessarily want to distribute those if you're not going to use them, but I'm thinking this largely for the purpose of you reteaching the material. And I don't mind you having them for study purposes, but don't ask for them just for the sake of getting them, okay? If you're going to use them, no problem. And that's good because I'd love for you to have it. Now, here's what I was saying. There's all sorts of cool stories in the heavens. Now, for example, are you looking at the Mazzaroth now?
Yes.
Okay. Anytime you see something having its foot over something else, it shows authority. So right here, see Hercules? See him with his foot on the head of the enemy of the dragon, right? And Ophiuchus, his counterpart, flipped upside down, crushing the scorpion while being stung. See that whole thing right there is the fulfillment of Genesis 3:15, right? Where did it go? This one here. I should be able to turn it around. All right, I'm trying to show you Ophiuchus with his foot on the scorpion is the actual fulfillment of Genesis 3:15. And his counterpart constellation head to head is Hercules. And I have to believe that those two constellations in all likelihood were the first two that God named for Adam, and probably did it right around the time of the fall. But I'm convinced beyond a doubt that the patriarchs of old, at least up through Abraham, all knew what I'm telling you. This storyline that the sun inscribes in the heavens. This is ancient knowledge, much older and predates than the Bible. But look at, for example, there's, like I said, there's stories that's told here. You see Leo with his head, with his feet over the top of Hydra. All this is symbolism. Yeah, now Leo means the leader. It's got its Christological meanings that we'll be getting into in the next couple of weeks. But in the heavens, look at this. Look at the violence over Hydra. Look at the Corvus eating the flesh of the dead serpent, and Crater, the cup of wrath being poured out on God's enemies. At the same time, look at the constellation before that in Cancer. This is all about the inheritance. This is all about being separated and called together to be with God. There's no violence there. No. But on the other hand, look at the violence that's here in Gemini, the two warriors. Look at there's Canis Minor, Canis Major, and Lepus. It's all about the victimization of the devil and wiping out the devil. So there's a great versatility in all of it. But the story it tells, like, for example, Taurus, the bull, coming in judgment. Wow. Huh. And, you know, I know, because I know that I know, that when Jesus walked the face of the earth, he knew that he was the fulfillment of that message.
Amen.
And whenever he said, I am the light of the world, what do you think he was talking about, Roxy? He wasn't talking about stage lights and being on the drama on TV. He was talking about, I'm the fulfillment of the sun.
Yes.
And actually, and so you know what sun means in Hebrew? It means righteousness. Shamash is the Hebrew word, or Shema. Anyway, so isn't that makes sense now, because the word zodiac, right, the word Greek word zodiac comes from the Hebrew word sodi. This is Bill Banks's research, which means a way or the way. And then so the sun means, it's just the way. The zodiac is the way of the sun. Well, he is the way, right? Who is the sun? And that's the way it is. So there's just so many things in the heavens that you just look at, and they symbolically represent
So cool.
Messiah, destruction of evil, casting Satan out of heaven. As you put the storyline of the Bible together with this in the heavens, you begin to see just a bigger panorama of the whole story than you do when you just read the Bible. Even, I don't mean just read the Bible, because we don't just read the Bible anymore, because we have the Holy Spirit that leads us and directs us as we read it, runs the movies for us. But just saying here, it was never God's intent for us to be without either or. And I can understand why, when people got the Bible, they might have lost a desire to study the scriptures in the heavens. You know, especially as they became more civilized and moved inside buildings and out of tents, and they had roofs over their head. And I get it. I mean, I like my house too. I'd much rather live in a house than outside in a tent. Okay. And you know, and then the coming of the incandescent lamp, and then, oh my God, and then mercury vapor lights was murder to the Magi. I mean, it's just murdersome. I mean, I've got an area, Roanoke is, 40 miles away from my house, and I've got a blotch in the heavens I can't read because of the mercury vapor lights 40 miles away. So anyway, of course, I'm not real happy about that. But I am blessed to live in a place where I can see the stars anyway. Okay, that being said, so you have the picture of the Mazzaroth, right? That we gave you, the digital one. Now, if you want a real good one, you can order one from us here. How much are they, dude? 50? I think there's a 50. This is suitable for framing, and I believe should be framed and put in every Christian's household in the world. Of course, that's me, you know. But I had a honest to God, real prophet come into my office one time and saw the representation of the Mazzaroth and almost fell under the power when he saw it.
Mm.
So, yes, Margaret.
I just have a question on that large map that you just showed. Like it talks about the different stars and the on each of the symbols. Can you see those stars and their names when it's on that chart?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can. Okay.
That's because of that young lady sitting on the floor back here.
Thank you.
So,
You're welcome. Now, you can't see the names of all those stars.
not all of them, but the major ones you can are on there. Don't you, aren't they? Yeah, Castro.
And the deacons.
Yeah, the deacons for sure. The names are on the deacons. Deacons.
Decans.
Yeah, and there's star names. Yeah, there's Capella. Yeah,
Okay.
the major ones, of course. Now, I tell you what, we've done a whole lot more work on star names since these were done, but these are accepted pretty much star names in the IAU, the International Astronomers Union. And some of these in here, however, are Hebrew.
Okay.
And we pulled some from Arabic. And but you know, they're the most common star names for most all of those. And they're major stars on there that you can pretty much say, oh, I was telling you earlier with NEO, naked eye observation, is an astronomical term that I apply exclusively to interpreting the heavens. I'm not a big telescope guy. I mean, but I tell you what, a pair of binoculars will change your religion when you look at the sky. I mean, it's amazing. I was looking at the belt of Orion the other night, which has got 3 stars in it. And I have one of those zero gravity chairs where you can lay back, because like we talk about, I wore out that disc on my neck looking up at the heavens, but I could take those just a little bitty pair of binoculars, 10 by 25s, and looked at the belt on Orion. Yeah, I gasped when I saw, you know, it was amazing how many stars are there. And but so help me, I ain't lying, I ain't dying. The whole story is up there. I can read it to you when you stand outside my house at night if the stars are shining and the moon's not too bright. But it's really, 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 really there, and it's always been there. And the Aquarius that we look at is the same Aquarius that Jesus looked at. And when Jesus saw Aquarius, he knew what it meant. By the way, he's the one that created all this, as it says in the book of Colossians. But anyhow, he what an amazing guy. But he's the ASTROLOGOS. This is all about him. And what's so amazing, whenever you begin exploring each one of the symbols in the decans, you see his characteristics. For example, in Capricorn, just decided I'd pick on Capricorn here for a minute. Over here. Now if I get it to rotate. There. And then whenever you zoom it, you can't rotate it. All right, Capricorn right here. Okay. Capricorn has 3 decans. They're Aquila, Sagitta, and Delphinius. And you see how they're all grouped right there together? And God bless Barbie again for the revelation of color coding these things. Man, what a deal that made. But, you know, just speaking, since we're having a live class here, right? I had a microphone. Whenever I discovered this circle right here, and I say discovered it, it's written in Proverbs 8:27. And I read it one day during my Bible devotions, and nobody had ever talked about it in any astronomy books I'd ever read. But let me go back and so I'm talking about right here, this circle right here, because this allowed me, once I drew this circle and put it inside here, then I drew the divisions of the decans. And all this is the constellational division between these 2 constellations here. When I drew these lines in here, it immediately segregated all of these. And this is in the same location in the heavens. And the way you look at it is, if you start looking at the north and look due south from where you're standing, you'll be able to outline and see these decans inside this major arc length as you move toward the center of the heavens. But I was going to say, in Proverbs 8:27, hold on, boys, get off my screen. You what? No, I'm good. I'm good. I was talking about wisdom was there when he made the circle on the face of the deep. That's what it says. Wisdom was there. But the circle on the face of the deep is the little circle in the middle here. And this is the one that the axis of the earth makes in its 25,920 year rotation as the earth wobbles in its precession. And this has got a whole lesson in it, the same as this does here, that the sun makes. This has got a whole lesson up here. And it's going to take, we'll have to do another class on this, an advanced class on this. Once we get through this one, I'll invite all the people that are graduates of this class. We'll go through the circle on the face of the deep. And that is amazing, an amazing study. But anyway, I got to all that by saying, look at what these different decans tell us about Jesus. Here's Aquila, the eagle, being wounded and falling from the sky. That shows in a Christological profile. This shows somebody that's self-sacrificial. Someone that doesn't have to be made to be a servant. They came from Jesus being kind-hearted, generous, kind, that kind of stuff, right? Not like me. I didn't come that way.
I did.
Vicky came that way. So that's why she's sitting on the floor in the back and I got the chair. Actually, she's being punished. She's being punished.
It's my choice.
Her choice, she said. But I mean, look, I'm just saying, look at this, that's Jesus, that's the sacrificial ones. Those are the kind of people that you want to show up whenever you're not feeling well, you know? And then the tail of the fish I mean, Delphinius, the dolphin, is rising up and jumping out of the water, head up, tail down, and that's the deccan of the tail of the fish, which shows life after death. It indicates being an encourager, right? Now we're going to go through all of these when we get into the Christological astronomy interpretation of these. But we've been around the circle, I think, 4 times here with this whole story. But you need to get it, because that's what the whole thing is about. It's about Jesus, man. That's what it's about. It's about Jesus. Just looking at this again, think about this. The word Maseroth, the root word of the word Maseroth in the Hebrew means to separate. And that means the way of the sun separated. So you separate the different constellations out that the sun moves through. And they're different lengths. When you get in a real starry sky, like I went elk hunting in Colorado in the mountains for this reason with a fellow astronomer that liked elk hunt, Wayne Peck. And God, the stars are so brilliant that I could hardly identify any constellations because there were so many stars. I mean, the ones that I know standing in my backyard because of the dominant bright stars, there's so many other stars this in the heavens. It's just almost unbelievable to really be able to see that. To be able to see the Milky Way, like really, really see it.
Yeah, I have.
And the middle of the Milky Way, it's just, I mean, there's a witness of God when you behold that.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, what a disservice we're done by not being able to see it or be involved in it. But hey, that's what we're studying here, man. This is amazing. And whenever you get through with this, you'll know the principles of how to read this. And then I think Jane was talking about last week, just get your cell phone, get yourself Google Sky Map or one of the astronomy programs, and go outside and hold it up at night, and you'll see which constellations you're looking at. That's one of the best ways I know to learn how to do it. I used a planisphere. I'll bring it next week and show it to you. I learned whenever I began learning how to identify constellations and stars, I use one of these things that you spin around and line up each day. And so that's how I had to learn. Yes, Allison, dear.
Dr. Dale, does the Milky Way have any Christological interpretation? Is it on the Maseroth?
It's not on this one. It's very difficult to draw. Actually, there's a great lesson in the Milky Way and the constellations that it flows through. But yes. So yes, how about that for an answer? I'm not going to get into it right now, but it's yes, and but there's a lot of mythology about the Milky Way as well, and like for example, they call that the river of promise or life or whatever, and that's why they made Cygnus a swan. I think Cygnus should be the Holy Spirit dove, but it's a swan because the swan's a water bird, and they called the Milky Way this river of life or whatever it was. They called it mythologically. It's I was going to tell you this a minute ago. In this circle in the middle here, I read David Flynn's book on Cydonia, and I also read his book on template and center time. And David E. Flynn's his name. And was my hero. I say was, he died at the age of 48 years old.
Mm.
Tragedy, one of the greatest biblical researcher minds I've ever heard of and seen. His book on Cydonia, the very first chapter, Allison, deals with that subject, and it's called the Ouroboros. And it's the whole circle of the Milky Way. And it's an amazing. It took me almost a month to get through one chapter, that one chapter. That's how deep it is. And so, but yes, most surely there is. And, but there's a lot of mythology about it too. And that's where David Flynn was just brilliant, because he could bring the mythology into the Christology. And by the way, when I did my book on the workbook, I sent him a copy of it. And when I did Circle in the Face of the Deep, did I dedicate that to him?
I think you did.
Anyway, there's an acknowledgement in there to him in Circle in the Face of the Deep. But from the time he had surgery for his brain tumor and the time he died, he got a copy of Christological Astronomy, and he wrote one of the endorsements that's on our website. And anybody that knows anything at all about esoteric stuff, like Tom Horn and Steve Quayle and all these guys that study stuff like that, David Flynn was the bomb. He was the boss of all of them. Amazing. God. So anyway, he wrote me a great recommendation on the book and encouraged me to continue to study it. But anyhow, he wrote that the tail of the dragon drew a third of the stars to the ground. Now look at here. Let me rotate this around here. I'm enjoying doing class today, man. I'm getting a chance to share all these good things with you, fun things. All right, okay, when you see the tail of the dragon here, a third of this, and here, Vicky, John, I'm trying to call you. From the foot of Hercules to here is a third of the circle, properly supplied anyway. So when this is talking about the tail of the dragon, this is the direction that the North Pole is moving, and is continually moving downward, showing the casting down of the dragon. This is a prophecy in the heavens that hardly anybody knows about, because they don't know the movement of the axis of the earth from Hercules to here. This from the time that Hercules was wounded, this is when the dragon had power to here, to right here on this circle. This is when Jesus died and was resurrected. And when he did, the pole star moved from there into here, into Ursa Major. And this is the way the pole star has been moving for the axis of the earth has been moving through the Little Dipper and approaching this star right here. And right now, this is where it is now. Okay, so when David Flynn said that to me about this third of the circle from here to here being the time of crisis, being the time that man was under the influence of Satan until Christ came, and then from here it moved into here, I knew immediately, because of the Christology of this is talking about the church, the bride, right? So what this means is, after Christ came, he came to call out the bride. And the whole time, This has been prophesying that the pole star has been in Ursa Minor and moving through here the past 2,000 years. It's been prophesying that he's looking for a bride. Now, right here in the heavens, this is the pole star. What is it? Rubicon? Oh, whatever it is, it's written on there. But anyhow, it means the one ridden upon. And right here in the constellational divisions is where you enter into Cephas. You know who Cephas is? Cephas is the king of the heavens, and the pole star is right here. And the axis is pointed right now at Polaris. So you have to understand that the pole, the Earth's pole, is moving, and that the star that we call the pole star now is only the pole star until the axis moves away from it. But at the time of what's the name of that star? John. Here. I'm on the phone, John. It's my wonderful neighbor. Anyway, I can't quite read it. Anyway, there was this whole time the pole was in the tail of the dragon. Mankind did not have the gift of Holy Spirit, but this is where it moved into here. Okay. So when I heard David Flynn mention a third of the tail of the dragon, I knew immediately that this is talking about the prophecy of after Christ came, that he gave the inheritance to his bride to call people out. But when it moves farther on, and it's in the process of doing this even now, departing out from Polaris, it moves into Cephas. Who is Cephas? He is the King of glory. Allison, this is the prophecy of the millennial kingdom that's staring us in the face every flipping night. Every night when we look at the location of the north axis of the earth, it's prophesying we're just a smidgen away from Cephas.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was thinking the millennial reign's coming up, and I was wondering if Cephas represents that time.
That's exactly what it represents.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. You see on the opposite sides of the circle here, you see the Redeemer on one side and you see the King on the other.
Where are we right now in that circle? Like exactly the pole.
Right there. Right there.
Wow.
Right there. So hand me that Mazroth there. So actually the heavens that we look at, is the center of them is right here. Okay. Rukaba is the name of it. This is the representation of it in the holistic sense of a 25,920 year period to show this circle. But without this circle here, it's really hard to divide these constellations into the decans and see this division here. But when you start at the middle of the middle of the middle of the circle this makes, then you geometrically proportion it. And that's how these lines were drawn to divide these. And you can see the decans that correspond by colors right in these sections. See the green, 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 and another green, purple, 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 purple. How this is in that section right there. And here's the same colors. You're not being able to see this. I'm holding up the Mazzaroth and you're looking at the screen share. Anyway, I think you got the picture. So, Margaret?
Okay, you may have said this, but I'm trying to process all of this. In the very, very center, in that small center circle, and it's about in the middle of Draco, there is a dot, a star. What is that star?
All right, let me see which one you're talking about again.
Is it a star underneath the word Draco?
Where are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah, if you were to turn the Mazzaroth so that Leo is at the bottom and you look up in the center, it's like a star that's right between the C and the O.
Oh, yeah. I don't know the name of that.
Okay.
Okay. Can't help you. Anyhow, you can look it up in Bollinger's notes in the Christology of the constellations at the back of that section. And
Okay.
Drago is a decan of Sagittarius. So look and see if it's in there. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
And look all the way at the back under Appendix 12. Yes, Allison.
Dr. Dale, that I know this would be in the study of the circle and the face of the deep, but how many years did you say does the small circle represent?
25,920. You get that by multiplying 72 times 360. The circle moves 72 degree, 1 degree every 72 years. So 360 degrees times 72 will give you 25,920. And Enoch said in his writings that you cannot separate astronomy from mathematics and geometry.
Well, does that
They're
mean that the Earth,
inseparable.
so is the Earth a lot older than what we were thinking? I mean, 25,000
Oh God,
years.
the Earth
I'm just-
is ancient.
Yeah.
The Earth is ancient. I mean,
So the heavens were declaring this long before Adam.
well, the best I understand, the heavens are always there, but with the coming of Adam, the Lord began to teach them the arrangements and give them the names that would give the message.
Okay.
Okay, so we started out with Adam in the garden in all likelihood in Genesis 3:15, showing him Ophiuchus or Hercules in the violence about being wounded in the heel as he crushed his head. And that was the prophecy of the Messiah from the beginning. Anyway, how do we do a little time here? Let's take a little break here. I'll be back in a minute. I want to do some resetting here. I think we'll start talking about the planets when we get back and sort of change gears. If any more questions you got on these constellations, you could be looking at it during break, but we'll come back in about 5. Okay. Voila.
You would have positively accepted it? Does that mean you are not going to positively accept it now? And what's the reason why you were? Absolutely. And what's the definition of ironic, irony?
So as everybody's coming back in here,
All right.
I was going to share something with you that we began talking about at the first part of our class today. I was just making conversation, but I saw this article that was in Capitol Hill Prayer Partners on this guy from England. I think his name was Ken Miller, that he's a deliverance minister, and the Lord gave him a revelation word. The demon that was involved with COVID. And the name of the spirit is Keteb. It's spelled Qeteb, but it's pronounced Kehteb with the emphasis on the last syllable, Keteb. And he began using this and casting spirit out of people. And he said he saw incredible results. He said almost half the people that he ministered to were instantly healed with manifestations of coughing and regurgitating, just normally like you would any demon. He said a lot of times they go to bed And, you know, during the night of that next night, that spirit comes out of them. They break into a cold sweat from all over. Love you, Julie. Julie's telling she's got to go. Love you, baby. Be nice to the dentist and don't hurt him. But anyhow, that there would be this ugly stench that came from the sweat and the bedclothes. And that there was manifestations, just like whenever you cast out other demons. And so, well, you know how long it took me to try it out, Yvonne, right? First time I could find somebody that had COVID. And that was Jamie Simple. And I got a text yesterday from Jamie. They said they had to put him in the hospital because of COVID. And then Jamie's a nurse. And then by God, Allison, they gave him, what do you call it, Remdesivir? How do you pronounce that, Cheryl? Where are you, Cheryl? How do you pronounce that?
Remdesivir,
Remdesivir.
something like
They
that.
gave him that. And that's what that does, is that shuts your kidneys down. Fluids back up in your lungs. That's how you get pneumonia from taking this other second round of death that Fauci deals. Well, anyway, I ministered to Jamie. Vicky was sitting in the room with me, and I ministered to him. I said, I can't call the spirit, commanded it to come out. I got a text from him this morning. He said, Dr. Dale, I've had a huge turnaround. He said, I've had a 99% turnaround. He goes, I had some of those manifestations you were talking about last night, but he said, I got up, I took a bath, I shaved. He said, I feel so much better.
Did you cast
Yeah.
out Ketev?
Heck yeah, I did.
Wow.
Yeah, would you spell that for me, please? Spell it for us.
Qeteb.
I can't wait to try it out.
T-E-B?
Yeah,
Q-E-T-E-B.
yeah. And it's pronounced Kehteb, Keteb.
All right.
I've got the article. I'm going to send it out to our partners probably. I need to see it a couple more times, work a couple more times. But the article's on Capitol Hill Prayer Partners, and I sent it out to Julie. Julie just left, but she's got, boy, if you just, and that's good, Paul. Paul said, just texted, he said he just downloaded the David Flynn collection for $10. Where was it on, Paul? Just get it on Kindle or something? Where'd you go, Paul?
Yeah, it's on Kindle.
Okay. Tell you what, guys, you bite into David Flynn's books, you gonna learn some things. Temple at the Center of Time took me to the cleaners. And I think I'm a reasonably somewhat educated and somewhat, sharp guy. Temple at the Center of Time, listen to this. It's about the distance from Jerusalem and the year that important events took place. It's just unbelievable. Like it's 1,948 miles from the Temple Mount to downtown London. It was in 1948 that the Balfour Act, that the Brits delivered the Balfour Act that liberated Israel. 666 miles and 66 feet from the Temple Mount to the shrine in Mecca. 666. The mileage from read the book.
What's the name of the book again?
Temple at the Center of Time. Download what Paul did. What was it called, Paul? The collection of David Flynn.
The David Flynn collection, and you just go to Kindle and put in David Flynn, it brings all this stuff.
Unbelievable guy. Okay, well, God bless you. Okay, let's move on here. Oh, I was recording during. Oh well, I guess I recorded during break. Okay, here we go. I want to talk to you about the sun and the moon and the planets a little bit. And we're going to do more depth of this next week. But it's necessary, obviously, as I said, if this is a language, then to really be able to communicate and understand it, the constellations are the letters and the planets are the numbers to be able to decode it in the little orphan Annie's secret decoder ring. And the whole process and principles are really quite simple. The sun, listen, the sun is the only light in our solar system that has light of itself. Okay, that tells us that this is about Jesus. He is the great I am. We are not the I am. Now we are little I ams, but he is the big I am, right? We got that figured out. He's the only light in our lives, and everything, all the moon and all the planets reflect the light of the sun. This is why this is a big deal that astrology is wrong. They're wrong 95% of the time in what planet someone's birth sky is where the sun was. That's because of that precession and their tables. The astrology tables were written 165 BC by Hipparchus, and they're still using the same ones. They don't have enough sense to look it up in a computer or look up in the sky. They just read the tables and continue to deceive people and be deceived. Anyway, the sun is the only one that shines. So all of the planets, when you start doing a Christological interpretation, all of the planets are really reflections of the sun. Got it? Because it's just the only one that gives the light and everything else reflects off it. Now, this is not the case for stars. Now, the stars in the night sky, they all have light of themselves. Okay? But when it comes to our solar system, everything's reflected from the sun. Now, I want to go through this and tell you now, the sun moves around the big circle every year, right? So for a certain number of days, it abides inside of particular constellations. And then and so you need to understand the sun is not moving. We're moving. I've said this before. Stars don't move in the sky. They don't. We move. And in our rotation or in our daily spin, we're constantly moving. But if we stopped spinning, the stars would be where they are all the time, every time, anytime, where they are. So, but that line that the sun makes is called the ecliptic path. It's very important that you know this, that all of the planets travel as they move on that line. I explained this to you a while back by showing you a picture of the solar system, but the solar system with the sun in the middle, all the planets rotate on the same linear plane. They all rotate right in here. In other words, they don't go like this or like that or like this. They all rotate in the same linear plane. Why? Because that's the way God made his word to be understood. It's not chaos. And so I get passionate about the people that muddy the waters over the beauty of God's word. Don't you get upset at people that butcher the Bible? Well, I get upset at people that butcher the heavens and distort the message, the true message of the Messiah. So anyway, the sun it stays in Virgo 45 days. Now, this is on page 30 of your Christological Astronomy workbook that you'll be getting ebook wise this week. It stays in Libra 23 days. So this is why I'm telling you that it's important to understand that the word Mazzaroth means to separate the arc length of the sun in these different degrees. And again, astrologers, they have made all of them 30 degrees, which is just not right. It's just not right. So total Scorpio has 25 days because it's in Scorpius 7 days and Ophiuchus 18, but that big slice of that whole thing that we call Scorpio should be called Ophiuchus, but that's okay. 25 days. Sagittarius 32 days. Capricorn 28. Aquarius 24. Pisces 38. That's a pretty big one. And Aries 25. Taurus is big at 37 days. Gemini for 31. Cancer is only in for Cancer 20 or 21 days. It's really small. And Leo 37 days. So, like I said, you have the chart in here, but what's important to know about this is that the sun is not moving. We are moving and the other planets are moving. The sun is just reasonably stationary, okay? It does have a drift, but it doesn't affect the location of the stars at all. So now each one of the planets and the moon and the sun have a Christological significance, and that's what we want to understand first and foremost as we talk a little bit about the planets. Let me pull up my PowerPoint slides and I'll show you the names of these planets. Okay, now if I go back, I can't do that deal. Okay, here. Here.
Dale, may I ask a question before you move on?
Sure.
Okay, so for example, so if Venus is in the constellation Aries, it's because those planets are moving and then along the elliptical path, and then it moves into a certain constellation.
You got it.
Okay,
You got it.
thank you.
And they're continually moving, and it's not that they move at varying speeds, but they're farther away.
Farther away.
From each other, so they have farther to travel in the circle.
So that's why the days are there.
Yeah, and so, but anyhow, here's the name of the sun. Can you see this on your screen? You got my PowerPoint slide up here?
Yes.
Okay. There's the Hebrew words Shemesh, Shema, or Shesharha. And you know, Psalm 19 verse 4 says, their line has gone out through all the earth, their words to the end of the world. That line is the line that the sun makes, and in them he has set a tabernacle for the sun. So the ecliptic path of the sun marks the images of Yeshua. And it shows the dominant image of Yeshua in your life. Now, let me share this with you while I'm on the subject. If in any instance you're looking at someone's birth sky, yours, anybody else's, and then the rotation around the on the ecliptic path, let's say the sun was right, well, we'll put it right here, okay? And it's on the day that the constellation location changes, okay? One of the reasons that the time you were born is important, because we can freeze frame and tell you exactly. But still, if you were a magi and you were reading this out of the heavens and you were looking, and this is what happened, the magi used to do, they would be consultants to the king. So when the prince and the princess was born, they would give them the celestial interpretation of their birth sky, their abilities, etc. And this went a long way toward developing the education of the next patriarch, the next monarch, I mean. So, but anyhow, if you've got the planet or the sun or the moon in between these two constellations, how do you interpret it? The way you interpret it is you look at the whole picture of the whole panorama of the person's profile. And it will give you a very good idea of which constellation it should be in. And you know what? You learn that from interpreting by the context. So if you got to interpret something specifically, you look at where it's set in the context. But that's why our interpretations and our birth skies on our computer is so fantastic, because we divide them and hit them exactly the way they're divided. But I'm telling you, if you're a magi and the king's son was born, and Virgo, I mean, Venus was between Libra and Scorpio, they didn't have a way of dividing that. So they had to understand the whole panorama of the heavens to be able to give the king that interpretation. And you know, this is what we're doing. Hold on to Allison, hold on. This is what we're doing, is trying to get an understanding of the Christology that's being shown in the heavens. So I'm going to have this question come up again. Well, I've got between Mercury is between Leo and Virgo. What does it mean? What it means is look at the whole picture of the constellational summary. And I'll show you how to do this as we move on and you start getting into level 3, etc., and seeing those decades. Okay, Allison.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's confirmation, but in a matter of 10 hours, I changed from Leo to Virgo, and I just couldn't believe it. The first one we didn't know the time on my birth certificate. I was in Leo. Then when I got the precise time, I was in Virgo. And so it's got to be right there on the line. So I was just curious. Yeah. Does that mean that I can put some Leo in my...
Oh, absolutely. And this is what I was going to say. It usually indicates you got a little bit of both.
Okay.
That's the best way to do it. But you'll get a bigger picture by looking at the whole panorama.
Okay.
Dale.
Now, yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Do we know exactly what time Jesus was born? If we're going to plug this in.
We have the deduction, Greg, that it would be between 6:18 and 7:45 p.m. because
Okay.
that's when that's when the crescent moon would be visible. And he was born on Rosh Hashanah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good window, though. It's a deduction, because but the moon being under her feet gives us a pretty strong indication of that.
And the date we say is September 11th.
3 BC, yeah. And that date is also confirmed by Jupiter and what Jupiter was doing in Leo at that time. So it's not just that we can see that, because Rosh Hashanah, the sun is in the body of the woman and the moon under her feet every year. But what delineated that particular year was what Jupiter was doing. Hold on a second. Okay, so beginning to talk about the planets. We're going to get into a lot more of the details about these when we get into the workbook, but I want to tell you, the moon is as it says in Genesis chapter 1, the sun rules the day and the moon rules the night. The sun's the greater and the moon's the lesser. But the moon is absolutely, of all astronomy, the moon is fascinating. And it moves daily. And it moves. I mean, it does. It's not just that we're moving, but it's moving. And we're moving with it. It's traveling with us. But its position and size and shape changes daily. And it's the timepiece that we use to measure our months and our years. And of course, the Hebrew year is 360 days, whereas the lunar year is 360 days, but the solar year is 365 and a quarter. So the difference in those two reckonings in the calendar has to be dealt with when you start converting biblical prophecy years into Gregorian Julian years. There's a factor you have to multiply the years by. Anyway, excuse me. Now, the moon, and I want to tell you this. I know this about the moon because this is what Jesus told me. And I said, Lord, what does the moon mean? He said, it means where you need to be faithful. You have amazing abilities and you'll see them manifested as you're faithful in those ways. And I've always thought that perhaps the reason for the implication and the inference of faithfulness is because the moon is changing so much that we need to be stable and be faithful. And faithfulness is a huge, huge principle that we need in our lives. So, but the moon, as it moves around the earth, divides the month into weeks. And when you begin looking at the moon and following it, the new moon rises in the western horizon, and it begins to get a little higher each night and becomes a little more visible each night. So when the moon gets to be exactly half the disk, that's 1 week. Okay, that's 1 week. That's the 7 days, and God's numbering system is based on sevens, largely. But anyhow, that's a 7-day cycle, and then when it gets to be full, then that's the second week. That's 2 weeks since the new moon, and the new moon is how dating is done in Hebrew. And incidentally, they didn't have names for the months. They were just the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, and sometimes the 13th month, if you needed to add an extra one every 7 years. But and then they just numbered the days: the first day of the first month, the 5th day of the 6th month, etc. So now we're in the, where are we in the moon? I don't even know. Well, it's new. Well, anyway, I was going to tell you what day of, and month and year of the year it is, but I haven't been able to see the moon for the past couple of nights, so I lost the shape of it. But nonetheless, it shows faithfulness, and the moon's location is the one where it's most specific on the time that you were born, because the moon can change 3 constellations in one day. It can move from Libra into Scorpio and then into Ophiuchus inside of one day, if it happens occasionally like that. So the time is important, and of your birth date. So but the moon means your faithfulness. We need to be faithful. Then also, as we go on through these different planets, they're really very simple in that they have a meaning. And Frances Rolleston, the woman pioneer in this field, actually began doing this work on the planet names, and I finished it out by following the names that I found in ancient research. But anyway, these the Hebrew names of the planets give you a great indication about what their Christology is. Now, the planets always have had a Christology, and they were named after these Roman and Greek goddesses and gods because of the Christological quality of that particular god. For example, Jupiter, okay, is the largest of all the planets, and it's the king planet. We know that partly because of its name, but because of its size. And we're just looking at the whole scope of this, but it means it shows rulership and leadership. That's what Jupiter shows. That's the Christology of Jupiter. Saturn, for example, got all the beautiful rings around it, and that shows the variety of services but your Saturn shows your service. Saturn is a really cool planet to study, because in a lot of astrology, they'll use Saturn to leverage curses against you, specifically, especially in India. They do this. But you know, Saturn is more of your destiny planet than anything else, because it shows where you're complete in your service. Pretty amazing stuff. But just the appearance of the planets and the location that they are in their order from the sun matters as well. So Mercury is the first planet from the sun, and it always travels close to the sun. A revolution around the sun for Mercury is 88 days. It goes all the way around the sun in 88 days. So, but it travels with the sun, and Mercury is what's called an inner planet. It's inside of the Earth, closer to the sun than the Earth is. And Venus is also an inner planet, and these guys move very rapidly. Now, the fact that Mercury travels close to the sun hence its name of Kovat Shema. It means the sun's companion and messenger. So there's this, Shema is the name of the sun, Kovha is the companion. So Mercury is the companion and the messenger. So Mercury means the message of the Messiah. And you know, it's interesting too. I'll come back to this slide in a minute. But how do I? Okay. Okay, well, inner planets and outer planets, the ones closer to the sun, move a lot more rapidly from our perspective as they travel with the sun. But as Mercury means the sun's messenger, then Venus has the Hebrew word, it's the Hebrew word nogah, and it means brilliant and lustrous. But it's always carried the inference of being the morning star, right? And there's the romance and the passion that's involved with Venus. It's the brightest light in the sky. And therefore, because of these three, greater love is greater. Venus shows the love of Christ, and that attribute of love in your life. So the location of Venus in your life, what planet, what constellation and what decan it's in, has got a large lesson that speaks to you about what you're passionate about. And it's almost impossible for me to not do this. But as I go through and think about these, I just am automatically leafing through the files of my mind in my profile. And it's interesting because I had a life and a destiny fulfilled before I knew the language. And then I learned the language and found out that I was me, that I had become what God wanted me. And I didn't know this before I began studying. I had no idea about what Leo meant. I had no idea that the sun was in Leo for me. I always learned from the horoscope is in Virgo. No, I'm a law enforcement officer. I'm a Leo, man. And you know what? I got planets. I got 3 planets in Virgo. So I'm a kingdom builder. So just this is the way this stuff works. Amazing. But Venus and Mercury, both for me, are in Virgo. And generally speaking, Mercury and Venus travel very close to the sun. And neither one of them will be more than 2 constellations away from the sun, one way or the other. If you think about this, as you have the sun and Venus is rotating around it, and then we're moving around the sun at a different speed. When Venus is on this side of the sun in its rotation, on this side, it's the morning star. When it's on this side, it's the evening star. See? Because of when it comes up in the morning and when you would see it in the evening. Anyway. The Earth is, they call it the third rock from the sun. Very interesting theories about the origins of the Earth. When you look at the diagram of the solar system, there's a huge asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. I was just reading an article about this the other day on it. And we demark it by the largest asteroid being Ceres, and we give it a significance because we were called since before the foundations of the world, and sometime during the foundations of the world, between then and now, there was a planet there that something happened to it. And a lot of people think that the Earth got hit by planet X and knocked it across the the orbit of Mars into its position where it is now in the third place. Other people don't believe that. They believe that the Earth was created here, and that's sort of what I believe. But nonetheless, there was a huge cataclysm that happened between Mars and Jupiter, and it left a big asteroid belt. And there used to be a planet there, but there's not enough mass in the asteroids to make up for a planet. So either it was the Earth that got blasted across to where it is now, or it got hit by planet X, and planet X picked it up and it's traveling with it now. And that's what happened, I believe. But we have a binary star system. NASA, or the aeronautical industry, has forever and ever said that we're a single star system with the sun being our only light, but this is not true. I've seen articles from NASA now that says that we have definite proof that we're a binary star system. Well, what does that mean? It means that there's two stars in our solar system, but one of them is mobile and is moving through our solar system, and that's planet X. And that baby is real, and it is in the Bible. Planet X showed up when Jesus was crucified. That's from Revelation 12, verses 3 and 4 tell you that. Gives you a description of it. And the Christology of that planetoid, is God's judgment. So, interesting stuff, man. Interesting stuff.
Excuse me,
We
Dave.
give this, the location of where this planet was. We in a birth sky, 1 second, Jane. In our birth sky, we notate this according to the location of the planetoid Ceres, CERES. And it's a deduction but it's the largest of the asteroids. It's quite a bit larger than the rest of them that's in that belt. But we give that a Christological significance. And that doesn't mean judgment. It means where you need more grace in your life, because it's the fifth location from the sun. We'll get to all this as we move on, but I just said this about the Earth because the Earth being third, there's a very interesting way that we read the Christological significance of the Earth, and we read it from the orientation of the sun. Everything else we read from the Earth, which makes it geophysically oriented, but the Earth we read from the sun, which makes it heliocentrically read. Those are big words that I don't know that you need to know what they mean, but helio is the sun, like Heliopolis, Egypt, is where they had so much of the sun worship. And geo obviously is Earth. So that's the center, reading it from the Earth. But anyway, this is in your book on the Christology of the constellations. And like I said, we'll be sending you the CA workbook this week, and it's got lots of a lot of description about the planets and their physical attributes and everything. Jane, did you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify. The sun is not the only planet that gives out light then. You mentioned planet X is a star and gives out light.
Well, interesting. That is dwarf star, and the light that it emits is a different wavelength. And so, yes, it's visible, but no, it's not. And it will be visible when it gets closer to proximity to us. But no, it's not visible all the time.
All right, that answers my question.
That's a good clarification. It's true, but it doesn't have the same light of the sun, right? So it's infrared. light. So,
Thank you.
and Allison, you had your hand up, or?
Yeah, I was curious about series in the book. It says, and where they need to be broken, where someone may need to be broken. I wasn't sure what that meant exactly.
We'll talk about that later. I'm just going through the planets and just giving a basic rundown of them now. But we'll get a chance to see all those whenever we start doing profiles. Okay. Mars,
Dale, oh,
what, who?
it's Roxy. When you mentioned just now, the Christological workbook you're going to give us, I have this one that I purchased from you several years ago.
Same thing.
This is the one?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have to download or print the other one. I can work out of this one, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. Thank you.
That book is the only one that we have produced in paperback. The rest of them are ebooks, but we
Okay,
have
good.
that in ebook for the purpose of distributing them all around the world too.
Oh, okay.
Rather
I didn't
than
know if
paying
there were
for-
if you had any updates or changes to it. No. Okay, good. Thank you.
What's the copyright date on that? Because we may have done an update on this.
I find that in 2011.
The third.
Well, we've done reprints, but we haven't done any editing. Same thing.
Oh, okay.
Same thing. Good. Okay. Mars is the Hebrew word madim, and that means red. And from that, we get that red is the color of blood. It also means redemption. And red is the color that makes a bull charge you. We use that to get your attention, the alertness, but it really means the passion of the Messiah and his fervor and his warfare. And Jesus has very much got warfare characteristics, and that's what Mars is about. So the location of that Mars in your birth sky is a real good indication of what and who you'll fight for. You know, the hill you'll die on. And we talked about, I was going to show you a Bible verse. Can we do that? Is that legal here? Okay. Here. Now, if my flash cube and my photographic memory goes off right. I don't know if that's right or not. It's not right. It didn't go off right. This is my Bible program. Are you guys watching this? Are you seeing this? Here in Acts 14:32, interesting that even after, I figured out that Mercury was the messenger, that Venus was the love of Christ, the passion and the love of Christ. Mars was the warfare. Jupiter was the leader. Saturn was the servant. And the moon showed where you needed to be faithful. Then I read this verse in Acts 14:12. It says, and they called Barnabas Jupiter and Paul Mercurius because he was the chief speaker. Jupiter, see, It says the gods are come down to us in the likeness of man. They called Barnabas Jupiter. You know why? Because Barnabas was the leader. And Paul was curious because he was the one that did the oration. He was the messenger. So you see, even right here in this Bible verse, we have couched and hidden within this the aspects of the Christology of these two planets, being the messenger and being the leader. And even though that's astrological, and that's what they believed as far as the gods coming down, nonetheless, what I'm trying to tell you is that all of these planets has a Christology. It has a meaning Christologically. So forever and today, see, Jupiter, when Christ was born, Jupiter was in a triple retrograde, a triple conjunction in retrograde in Leo around Regulus. So Jupiter is the king planet. And everybody knew that because it's the leadership. And so Jupiter was drawing a circle around Regulus. That's what a retrograde looks like. It just comes in, backs up, and draws a circle around this Regulus in Leo. That's the king constellation with the king star and the king planet doing a triple conjunction in its retrograde around it. At the time Christ was born, I'd say that's a pretty good sign in the heavens.
So
Jupiter is the
probably
king. Jupiter's the king.
Paul's Jupiter was probably in no, his Mercury was probably, his Jupiter was in, what am I trying to say? His no, I'm getting Jupiter and Mercury mixed up.
Yeah. Well, anyway. So anyway, just saying here that Saturn, to finish this thing out, it's the seventh planet. That's very important to know that because it's the Hebrew word Shabbati, and it has the same root as the word Sabbath, and it means seventh. And this is interesting because when you start counting the planets, it's not seventh if you don't count planet X, because Mercury's 1, Venus is 2, Earth is 3, Mars is 4, Jupiter's 5, and then Saturn would be 6. It's not the seventh. And it was named seventh because there's another planet in there. And you've got Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Ceres, Jupiter, and Saturn. That's 7. So Ceres is that large constellation that used to be a planet there that we give Christological significance to. Uranus and Neptune, they're in a level 3 profile when you get them done. They're not visible with the naked eye. And as I said before, NEO, naked eye observation, is the way that I believe Christological astronomy is read. I think you can learn a lot from telescopes and these things. I think they're wonderful. However, Uranus and Neptune are not visible with the naked eye, except occasionally Uranus, you can see Uranus, and I have. It was about 3, 4, 5 years ago, you could see it for about a month. And it was real close to the Earth. And that, to me, speaks of hope. And, you know, something that you can see but not quite have or see is something in the future. And I've always thought that Uranus and Neptune speak to us of our hope of life after leaving this body. And I believe that Uranus has a significance of the millennial kingdom and Neptune of heaven. I don't make a big deal about it whenever I do profiles normally, because I think that the 7 characteristics that we're talking about, that the 7 visible planets portray, is what we need for a complete 7 being perfect character, right? So, but I think they are important, but see, they don't have any Hebrew names because they never knew they existed. It was only until they started looking at them through telescopes that they could find them. One was in 1847, I think they found. The other was in 1923, whenever they discovered it. But anyway, as you go through and read this section on the planets in here, it'll give you a good idea about about them and the Christology of them. And we're going to go through them specifically in more detail as we start doing these profiles. So for next week, I'll send you the link for this week. And I'm going to send you the link for the Christological Astronomy Workbook. It's a big piece, so make sure you got room enough to download it if you need it, like Roxy does it, whatever. But if you don't have it printed, you ought to get it printed. These books are very valuable, but they wouldn't be worth anything if you only had them digitally. So, and you couldn't get them. Yeah. Well, you can order the CA workbook through the bookstore, but all the rest of them you have to print. We don't have any of the rest of them in printed form. Make sure that you are registered on our website and you've done your level 1, because we're going to move on and start working on your level 2 and 3, even next week when we start doing this. Once you're registered on the website, it'll be easy to do that. And we'll need to get your level 3 in your hands sometime, probably week after next, so that we can begin going through that and dissecting it for you. It's one of the major goals of our class was for you to be able to understand this for your own self personally, and then to be able to master it to help others as well. So, and we're on our way to doing that. We are. So, anything else, Margaret?
This is on track, but sort of off track. Has Vicky ever, like I have one of the prints that she did. Did she ever do a drawing of someone's birth sky for them to buy?
No.
No. Okay.
Never. Our goal, Margaret, has been able to get the computer to print it out, and we're still working on that.
Okay.
And we're not far from it. We have all the data, but it was just that getting it in a print format. But it's possible. We're working on the app for it too as well. Yes, Miss Jane.
When we get to interpreting our the birth skies, my question is about the tools that we'll be using. You had mentioned Stellarium, the computer program, and then you also mentioned some overlays. I think they're physical overlays of the heavens.
No, but
what do you
I
suggest?
was going to mention to you next is it will be necessary for you to download Stellarium. And it's just stellarium.org and follow the instructions.
Okay.
But it's .org. And you'll need to do that. This is an amazing tool. It's a free astronomy program. And it's a great, great service. Plus, we have our own personal planisphere that we've designed for Stellarium in conjunction with their director. So, but you'll need to download Stellarium. We'll be using that to do birth skies, because I want to teach you how to do birth skies from Stellarium before I show you how to do them from the computer program. So you'll have the understanding of how to do them rather than just reading them.
I did download Stellarium, and then I started looking at the instructions, and I said, I guess I'll wait.
Yeah, it's
You're going to show us how to use it.
figure it out as you go along. Tracy, you have something, dear?
Yeah, is now appropriate time to ask for the PowerPoint?
Sure.
Thank you.
Actually, why don't you email the office and ask for it?
Okay, okay.
That would be better. And Cheryl, I already got your request. Did you get it, Cheryl? Did you get what we sent you? You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay. Yes, but I can't download it to my desktop, which I think is okay. I can see it in the email, and it doesn't twinkle like yours. So it may just be if you've got I have pretty up-to-date computer, and I don't have the ability to download it, which, maybe that's okay. I'll just use it for study. That's what I wanted it for.
Nobody had any problem with that last time. We gave it to them in the last class. So I'll have to look into that. Maybe some of the.
I responded, I think this morning to Tracy, but I don't really think it's a problem, Dr. Dale, because at this point I'm using it for study.
Okay, good. All right.
Is that emailing Barbie for that? When you say the
No,
office?
check, it's the office,
The
the
office?
office, yeah. So. Alrighty then. Anything else? Fun.
Fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dale.
So much.
Thank
Great
you.
class.
Thank you.
If I do anything for you, but we'll be sending you the link to review this and CA workbook for those of you that need to download it and get with it. So enjoy the stuff. Have
Thank
fun with
you.
it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Great
We'll
class.
see you-
Thanks, Dr.
See you
Dale.
next week. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Bye,
Make it so
Terry.
Bye.
Bye, Elsa. Bye, see y'all.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye, Vicky.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, but Dale,
Yeah.
we can also purchase the workbook. You guys have it in your,
Yes.
yeah, I'll do that. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Hey guys. God bless. Goodbye.